family's a 10.
I choose this family.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 124 of 911 Lone Star Roundup. I'm one of your hosts, EJ, and with me are my lovely co-hosts, Katie and Grace.
Hey guys.
Hi guys.
Today we will be talking about season 5, episode 5 of 911 Lone Star, entitled Thunderstruck. There's so much to talk about, and we start right away seeing TK and Carlos in couples therapy. And I remember seeing some of the released stills and then the video, and I was like, okay, this totally has to start the episode, just the way the vibe was. Like, I know Lone Star and their vibe. And this was definitely it.
I loved it. I was immediately suffering with secondhand embarrassment a little bit, but
yeah.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and
I thought it was going to be so much worse, but just
Yeah, that's
immediately
my
I had to
thing.
pause it. I had to pause it almost right off the bat just to accustom myself to the idea that this was going to be the first thing I was watching. And then I was like, okay, fine. Yeah, we're good.
Right. So the therapist is asking them how they're doing, and Carlos is like, can you be more specific, like terms of our current temperament or the state of our relationship generally? Because this is obviously their first time. And TK is like, I think she just means how we are, babe. And Carlos is like, good. And TK's like, we've been better. Oh, awkward.
already
At the exact same time too. And
Yeah.
it's like they didn't even act surprised.
No.
Neither of them acted. They knew how the other would respond.
Yeah, totally on different sides, but
Right.
hey, I expected way worse.
Listen, I actually loved this. I loved this particularly
Same.
because I think it's amazing to show couples in couples therapy
Yes.
when it has not gotten to the point of blowout fights.
Amen.
They had an
Agreed.
extremely civil session. They were listening to each other, they were relating to each other. They just needed a mediator there.
Yeah.
And that is what therapy like that is generally for. So I loved that, we usually see it when it's at the point of, divorce or, they're fighting every moment. No, they just needed someone else there. And I love that we saw it. And I just love how it turned out. Also, their therapist was really pretty great.
Yeah.
Just in guiding the conversation.
Yeah, she and obviously you could tell she was. And I know TK asked, is the first session usually this awkward? And the therapist is like, I've seen worse.
I know.
It's usually worse. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's usually
right.
people yelling at each other and pointing out just I don't know, obviously pointing out the other person's faults. Obviously you're talking about your issues, but I feel like a lot of times shows, when they show it, it is obviously when people have they've gone way too far about getting help or even just seeking something like this. And it was just refreshing to see not a couple yelling at each other, being like, you did this, you did that. It was nice to see them be I don't know why we're here, but we're here, and I guess we're trying to talk about things, and it was so much better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think and this is my last little add-in. We can move on, but I was just thinking. I think also when we reach that stage, the people that go to couples counseling, it's their last step before throwing in the towel. They're screaming at each other. Oftentimes you can't tell if the people love each other anymore. And TK and Carlos, you could tell they loved each other, that they wanted to make it work. They wanted to overcome what was happening. They just needed to figure out what was even happening and be able to listen without having to feel defensive. So it's just so refreshing to see, even in that situation that usually has a negative stereotype associated with it, how much they still loved each other.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so the therapist asks, what brings them in? And Carlos says, because my husband thinks that I'm not as present as I could be some nights. And she asks if that's a fair statement. TK says, yeah, sometimes. Yeah. And he's like, all nights would be more accurate. Carlos is like, that's not true. And TK's like, remember when he wanted to take guitar lessons, but then TK had softball? And then he's like, it was 6 months ago. And Carlos hasn't brought it up since. And then Carlos is bringing up dinner. He was so passionate. Remember I dinner the other last week? And I was like, oh my God, Carlos. He's just grasping at straws now. And so TK's like, yeah, but that was kind of a one-off. And Carla's like, no, you said, I'm not present all nights. And he's just saying, if you told her about dinner, then she would agree that it wouldn't be all nights. I was like, okay.
He was feeling a little
Yeah. So we see a flashback of dinner, and TK comes home from work, and Carlos has made dinner, brisket and kugel. And this therapist says, that's really impressed. And TK's like, yeah, it's the best comfort food of his people. And TK's like, yeah, dinner wasn't the problem. It was after.
Oh no.
They're trying to talk about the sexy time, but you get this really scene that's like kind of almost like our, first real introduction to Tarlos.
You
And
know what I
then,
was getting flashbacks to though? No, 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 no. I was getting flashbacks to the
212.
night of the fire.
yeah, me too.
212, that's what I
I
was
was there like,
screaming.
no, 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 no,
Everyone
no,
was
no, no, no. This
mentioning
is
the
too close.
pilot. And I
Yeah.
was like, 212, please,
Right.
guys. Do you
I
not
didn't even
forget
think.
that night? I remember that night like it was yesterday.
Right. And what does
I was
Carlos
like,
do? He falls asleep.
Oh, poor Carlos. Like,
Poor Carlos.
it was like it was kind of cute because it was just like that, like, plummet and like the loud snore. Like, I swear, my dog snores about just that loud. And he's
Yeah.
a little guy. I really liked the comfort food thing because like Carlos's love language is very much like acts of service. And
Mm-hmm.
I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking about this the other day. I think TK's would definitely be quality time just
Yeah.
based on this season,
Yeah.
what we've seen. For
Yeah.
sure, it's that. Like I was literally like thinking about this the other day. I'm like, love language is my favorite thing to think about, but I was just like, yep, that's his.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So TK's like, he's like, he fell asleep during sexy time. Nobody has ever fallen asleep on him during sexy time. And Carlos says, it's not about your. It's just they keep going back and forth about this. Carlos finally says, would you please stop saying sexy time? And he was like, I was tired. And TK's like, yeah, you're always tired because he's up on his phone all night, on the phone, with God know who, pouring over his case files.
Who does that
And
remind me of? Who does that remind me of? TK literally
yeah,
a season or two
Yeah.
ago with like the sponsor thing.
yeah.
Like they're throwing, not quite throwing stones in glass houses, but definitely a little bit reminiscent of like, yeah, well, you've also been there before. I mean, that didn't happen quite for as long as this has,
Mm-hmm.
but
Right,
it's
yeah.
definitely a little bit of, yeah, you've both had those moments.
I think everyone has had those
Right.
moments.
Yeah.
Carlos shares that, yes, that is accurate. He's up a lot. And he explains that his father was murdered last year. And I was thinking about it, and they're talking about how Kike and Carlos are talking about their first anniversary coming up, which means it's probably at or about the anniversary of his death.
Oh, that's a good thought.
Murder. So, here it's been a year now. Carlos still hasn't solved it. And he's like, explains it with him being a Texas Ranger, like his dad. DK's kind of sharing that, he's like, well, he believes his dad is connected to one of his dad's old cases. And so Carlos is like, yeah, his father had 300 open cases going when he died. So he's been trying to go through different case files and different things to see if he can find something that might point to why his dad was killed. And, TK shares like he's trying to be supportive. He's trying to be understanding. Carlos assures him that he's been incredible, but unfortunately, there's no closer to finding his dad's killer. And Carlos is just stuck in that night. And he's just, I get it. He's like, he wants his husband. He doesn't want him constantly dwelling on something that happened a year ago that they may never have an answer to.
Yeah.
And, TK says how their first anniversary is coming up and he feels like they're already drifting apart. And the therapist asks Carlos what he feels when TK says that. And Carlos says that it hurts and he doesn't want that. So obviously, like you guys said, this is when you should start couples counseling, not when it's so bad that nothing is going to fix it. It's if you should have been doing this all along. And so I'm really grateful that they are seeing that, because a lot of couples don't. And the next thing you know, they're 2 kids in with a stepchild and, getting divorced because they're cheating on the other one. So this was kind of a great start, but also a very okay, well, how is this going to be handled in the rest of the episode? But before we get more Carlos and TK stuff, we see this horse barreling into this outdoor bar.
I love it. Very Texas. I loved it.
Love it. I loved it.
Looked like it was a family brewery or something that had a yard. And so he was all of a sudden this horse comes in. The person riding it has passed out on the horse somehow. Even my roommate was like, how is he still on the horse? I'm like, well, it looks
Yeah,
like
he should not have
it's
stayed on the horse the entire time.
yeah. I was
If
like, it
anything,
looks
he should
like
have been dragged.
yeah.
Which, if he wasn't already dead, would have killed him.
Well, and at first we don't know that he's dead, but I was thinking his feet were stuck in the stirrups pretty sturdy. So I was like, well, maybe because of the angle of his feet being in the stirrups, it kept him on. Of course, during the whole situation, the 126 respond. Owen's like, well, Judge, you're our resident horse expert. So, what should we do? They're trying to corral the horse with beer because, everything in beer is stuff that horses eat.
Yeah.
And I did double check. Horses can have beer. They just can only have it as a special treat in moderation.
Right.
So yeah, I was looking, I'm like, as a bartender, I'm like, can horses? I looked it up and yes, again, it's really not anything they haven't had before. I just can imagine the fermentation wouldn't be the best for them if they had it in.
Right.
But nothing's good in access either. So yeah.
Yes.
But I'm like, okay, that's a good angle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you got a drunk horse running around. I mean, I guess I don't know. I'm sure it doesn't affect them the same way it does humans.
Drunk riding.
Drunk riding. And so obviously the horse knocks over the bucket, doesn't get all the stuff. He gets spooked, and he takes off. So then they get in the truck and chase down the horse while Judd's making a lasso so Owen can go lasso this horse.
Yep, Judd tying the
knots
away.
I loved it. It was just like, hey, Cowboy Owen.
My favorite line, I think, of the whole episode was Judd being like, I feel like Texas has been rubbing off on the captain, and I'm just like, well, it has been like 4 or 5 years. Yeah. So I would hope so at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, they do finally get the horse restrained, like lassoed, and they get the guy down. Unfortunately, he's already passed away. So Kay and Tommy and Nancy have him on the gurney, and then the horse, even though they're kind of trying to hold him away, he bolts right over to the owner because it's like the horse knew his owner had died. And so he was like trying to get help, but then it was too late. And then now he's trying to say goodbye. And it was just a really emotional scene.
I know. I started crying a little bit.
I was crying
because I was like, okay, anything with animals just makes me cry. Like, it's how I am. And it was very touching. Like, I know it's so interesting, like how like animals deal with death, and obviously like animals, like they know about it before you do. Like I know when one of my dogs passed away like almost 5 years ago, like 4 years ago, my other dog like sat at the top of the stairs and was like looking down. I have a picture of it somewhere. And like I was like, he's acting so weird. And then obviously when I went down the stairs and I went to the couch, I realized that he had passed. So it's so weird. And I know like a friend of mine, like somebody in her family died and they brought that person's dog to the funeral like after, and he walked right up to the casket and said bye. Like that stuff, oh my god, I could literally start crying right now thinking about it.
So our dog, I was just telling you girls, our dog is sick right now, to the point where we're not sure if she's going to be okay, if she's going to make it out of this. And we have a puppy. He's not really a puppy anymore, he's about a year old. And we're keeping them separated at the moment because she's very weak. And he's just crying downstairs and looking around because he knows something's wrong with his sister, and he's not sure. He can't see her, like he can't play with her, and he plays pretty rough, but she gets as good as she gets. And so he's just massively confused, and I was sobbing at the scene right off the bat. I was like, no, you cannot play, because animals will set me off. Same, Katie, just like that.
Same.
I grew up with horses, so I was not the horse girl of the family, but I did grow up with horses. They are extremely intelligent animals, and they are also extremely sensitive. They are able to, they can, just like a lot of animals, but especially horses and dogs, I've noticed, can sense your moods, shift like that before you even can. They can sense when something's wrong. They know when something's wrong. And horses and dogs and stuff like that, they have like historically stuck by their owners and try to get them help when something has happened. So seeing this happen with the horse and seeing him go over to say goodbye, and I'm just sobbing because I'm like, he knew, and he was absolutely trying to get his owner help.
Yeah, he was, and I feel bad for him. And I was thinking about, it seemed like whenever I had a dog, we also had a cat. And I remember when our puppy passed away when she was only about 3.5, and our cat would constantly run by wherever she was kenneled, or even like in the area of the house where the cat could get to, but the dog couldn't. The cat would always like look at her like, "Ha, I'm free, and you're kind of stuck in your kitchen," or whatever. Whenever we kept her in the
That sounds about right.
Yep.
and
Cats are like that.
I remember when she passed away, the cat kind of snooping around in the kitchen, like, where is she? Like, why can't I walk through here without the dog barking at me? And it was just, you could see the cat had changed. And they have such an intuition of their owners. And this is obviously a horse that's been in somebody's life for a long time. So yeah, I was pretty heartbroken to see the guy had passed away and everything, but it does trigger the rest of this, the episode. So the next scene we see is the son of the guy that passed away showing up at Owen's, because he'd given, Owen gives the guy his saddle because they had kept the saddle when the police brought the animal control down to take the horse. And he's talking to the son about the horse, and they find out the son's like, well, he's like, I guess I'll start using my dad's saddle on my own horse. The guy's like, well, yeah, when you ride Thunder. And he's like, no. He's like, he's going to be put down because apparently the dad had been keeping the horse for a little while, but the horse has got some triggers that seem to be a mile long. And
They are
pretty tough to handle him. And he didn't want to ride him anymore. So yeah, you can see the wheels turning in Owen's head.
I'm the same way
oh,
though.
at that
Like
literally the entire
that
time,
set me
even when
off.
Yeah.
even the moment that the owner died, I was like, oh, Owen's got a horse now.
Yes, Owen has a horse.
Just from the
I would be the
beginning.
same way. I'd be like, I have no means to have a horse, but like I would do the
Horses
same
are
thing.
expensive.
Yeah.
Like they are
Yeah.
massively expensive. Just
Yeah.
feeding them, much less boarding. If you don't have your
Yeah.
own like place to keep them, and
Yeah.
you've got to rotate pastures, or else they're going to get worms, and you've got to have like the farrier come out and trim their hooves, clean their teeth. Like they are massively expensive animals.
Yeah.
So I was just like, well, we'll see how this goes. But I knew immediately. I'm like, yep, that's Owen's horse now.
All
Yeah,
right.
because I was like, what the hell? I get
Also,
it,
he
but it's
loves
like,
having a help case. He loves having something to
oh
help.
yeah,
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
that's
So,
true.
I was like, I'm getting a flashback to Buttercup moment.
I
Also,
yeah, I
where
did
is
write a note
Buttercup?
about that later.
Yes. Where is Buttercup? Yes. Yeah. So we go on to Tommy and TK's scene. So Tommy's in the bunk room. Looks like she's reading something, and her back is to like the entry, and she's like, "Are you, He's like, "Are you just gonna, keep lurking? Are you gonna say something to TK?" And he's like, "How did you do that?" She's like, "I have two 13-year-olds. I'm used to sneaky."
Oh, the scene, I loved it.
It was such a good scene.
This is a really good scene between TK and Tommy. And I think TK has kind of started to look up to Tommy as a mom figure after losing Gwen. And, obviously he works with her, but you can also
I
tell that
love
TK
that.
does this best to not bring a lot of his personal stuff to work.
Yeah.
Because he specifically asked that he needs to talk to her about something non-work related. And she's like, okay, well, what's going on? And TK's like, well, he's like, this stuff I kind of talked about with my mom. I was like, oh, okay. That, he shares that him and Carlos are kind of going through a rough patch. And, Tommy's like, oh, I had no idea. TK's keeping kind of quiet about it. And then she asks what's going on. And TK says that Carlos has been really obsessed about finding his dad's killer. And Tommy's like, well, I understand that. Which TK is like, yeah, that's the hard part because it is understandable. But Carlos is becoming consumed with it, and it's constantly starting to affect their relationship and the lack of time they can spend with each other. And I don't know, he brings it up, and I was like, yeah, this is a good perspective. So TK's like, it's kind of like living with an addict. He's like, I should know, right?
Yeah. Honestly, when he said that, I'm like, okay, that makes sense because though, especially the way they're portraying it in the beginning of the season, like him staying at work late, not coming home until like really early the next morning. And like that would totally put that in perspective. Like, oh yeah, that is kind of like that.
Well, yeah,
Because, well, Well, I was just thinking like addiction and obsessions are all forms of each other.
Right.
They lead to each other. They happen at the same time. It could be framed either way. I will say that they can be also like exclusive. They are not always accompanying each other. But he is obsessed with finding his dad's killer, understandably, but it's also almost an addiction at this point because he can't put it down. So yeah,
And
Shige was spot on with it.
he was, and I was like, yeah, because it's kind of one of those things where TK's drug of choice was drugs and sometimes alcohol. So he's had to give that up. Right now, Carlos's obsession slash addiction is work, case files, trying to figure out how to find out his dad killer, which is totally like I get it, but I'm like, Carlos, you gotta live your life too. And he's starting to continue to live in the past.
And like his dad wouldn't want that either. Like
right.
he wouldn't want Carlos to be
Yeah.
doing this. So
Well, and
yeah.
even Tommy says, well, maybe you know what he needs to hear. And Tiki's like, I wish, but he feels like the harder he presses, Carlos just kind of tunes him out. And then he asks her how her and Trevor do it, manage a relationship as the pastor and
Oop.
paramedic captain. And she's like, oh, well, we actually broke up. But
And I was like, oh, I don't know how much time has passed, but it's like, oh,
yeah,
she's
so
also not brought her personal life to work, clearly,
right.
which is good. Don't bring your personal life to work.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it kind of makes it seem like not that much time has passed, but also like that's not really something she would bring up unless she wanted to, and it doesn't seem like she's
also,
at the
that's
phase.
an extremely difficult topic to bring up.
Yeah, so it's like if somebody asks, she's gonna tell them, but like
Right.
Kind of like what happened here. Like he asked, and she was like, "Well, great, I can't help there."
yeah.
At least with Trevor as the topic.
Yeah, and and she then shares, that she's like, Trevor and I didn't go the full distance, but her and Charles did. But they had their own rough patches all the time. It was stressful. Both of them were stressed, high intensity jobs, and she didn't always handle it well. And she was the one coming home late with alcohol on her breath.
I know TK assumes it was
Yeah.
Charles, and I loved that it was Tommy because I feel like it's always like the guy in the relationship that's out drinking, out with his friends, like doesn't come
That's
home
at least how it's
late.
always
That's always
publicized
how it's
because
portrayed.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
loved that she was like, it was actually me.
And like, hey, that's not an easy thing also to admit either. So like,
Right.
Good on her.
Right. And
But I think
you can finish.
no, I was just thinking that also I think that just shows how substances really do leak into a lot of first responders' lives, whether it be in forms of alcohol or drugs, even just maybe smoking or vaping or something along those lines, some sort of coping mechanism.
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting to see because we haven't heard a thing about this before. Like whereas we knew about TK's battle with addiction from the very beginning. We see it from the very start. It's very interesting to see like she's like, yeah, like she's reached, she has been successful. She has she has a blossoming career. She's at the peak of her career, but she still had those rough patches and made it through with her relationship and her job intact. And sometimes that doesn't always happen.
Yeah. Well, and she explains, she used to, go drinking to decompress after work. So she didn't bring it home, but then that was taking time away from her time with her husband. Dinner would get cold, things like they would have a fight. So then she started staying out later. So he'd be in bed when she got home. It was a vicious cycle. And, Tommy said she didn't break it. He did by still waiting up for her one night and saying, he's going to continue to do it. And TK's like, well, I guess I have to make Carlos a porterhouse now. Because, she shows that, he left a steak and waited for her to come home. And he's like, we're going to have our time together regardless of, when that time is. And TK's, I think, getting the point of he just needs to keep doing something to remind Carlos that he's there for him and he's at home with him. It was a really good scene. I'm really glad they had this because I think TK's needed kind of a motherly figure. And it's obvious Owen's previous relationships have not been the greatest when it comes to female people in his life.
Yeah, it wouldn't have like this is not a conversation you would have with Owen. Or honestly, like
No.
I feel like this is just very like motherly conversation, so it's good that Tommy's there because there's like literally nobody else that could give him this sort of advice. Owen, I love him at times, but he like literally does not give good advice at all about this sort of thing.
I do think he would try to show up in this conversation if TK came to him and had it, but it all comes to I don't think he'd be able to really advise on it. Because it also seems like Gwen really stepped in for TK's addictions and took like action on that. So yeah, I think, now that Gwen's not here, I never really thought of Tommy as like a motherly figure towards TK. I don't even know if like I would think that all the time, but in this conversation, I think she definitely took that role, and I definitely appreciated it from her. I think he definitely did too.
Yeah, so then we get this scene with Carlos at work with Campbell. Interesting character, this Campbell man.
I know he is.
So Carlos is showing him gifts that he's trying to think about buying for TK for their first anniversary. And he's like, given that, it's the first year's paper, he's trying to come up with some ideas. He asks Campbell what he's gotten his wife.
And I was like, whoop, that crushes our dreams of hoping he was gay, because I know we were talking about that a few episodes ago.
Right.
I was like, whoop. Well, I guess that's on it.
Yeah. And
yeah, I don't know, multisexuality exists.
Yeah.
But
that's true.
He's got a female partner. He's got a female partner at least.
Yes. And so he rattles off like this exactly like how many flowers he gets his wife. And Carlos is showing him, all the ideas he's got. And he's like, I don't like those gifts. He's like, I don't get it. And he's apparently not much of a gift giver, which, Carlos is definitely not. He's an act of service. You're right.
Yeah,
yeah.
So gift giving isn't really his thing.
My dad is like acts of service, so I totally get Carlos in that sense. Like the way my dad shows love is like doing something for you, like little things, and like I've just seen the things that like he does for my mom, like little things. I can't even think of an example right now. He'll like pick her up something like that he knows she likes or something like that. So like I totally see Carlos in that
Yeah,
sense.
absolutely.
And so, Campbell's like, yeah, I get that arrangement of flowers for every birthday, anniversary, and special event for his wife. So he's not very original at all.
I know. Like I guess like A for effort, but I'm also like if that was me, like I'm not really like I think flowers are pretty and they're nice, but I'm not like a really flowers kind of girl. Like if somebody gave me a certain specific arrangement like for every occasion, I think I would be like
I
Yes.
mean, his wife might not mind. Like this might just be a thing that's like between them. And I definitely have heard of some cases where it's like a tradition to get like a certain gift every single year. I don't know if I would say flowers is the thing that I
Right.
would choose to be like that tradition, but I don't know, maybe it's something that just works for them. Like I'm not gonna trounce on that because everyone has a different
Yeah.
relationship. But like from the outside, it definitely is like, okay, well, that's definitely
Right.
not helpful in this case. Also, Campbell, maybe just if you haven't already, check in with your wife and make sure that she's not needing something else.
Yeah.
yeah, I
yeah.
liked Carlos. I liked like the silhouette thing. I thought that was very like
That was
heartfelt and stuff. Like I thought
Yeah,
that
that
was
was
cute.
But once you said that they look like they were strangling each other, you can't really see anything else. So
See, I didn't see that at all because like people make like things like that all the time, and I'm like, I don't get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I could see if it was like charm for a charm bracelet, like getting it for every season, like that makes sense. But the
Yeah.
same flower arrangement for everyone, I'd be like, because some women like to save that stuff, like compress the flowers in a heavy book or something, so they can like dry them out and save them and stuff. Like, well,
Yeah.
this is when he gave it to me for my birthday, and then the next anniversary on this flower. I was like, yeah, it's the same one.
Yeah.
So after that, we head to the 126 where Jed's cleaning the floors. Mateo's teasing him about them not being as clean, and Marjan's like, "Oh, are you getting proby envy?"
Which he
and-
absolutely is.
It was so funny.
And
Mhm.
you know, Mateo goes to put some like candy or something on the floor, and Judd's like, you know, I wouldn't eat off the floors, and Mateo thinks Judd won't eat off them because they're dirty, but it's actually because Judd just put some industrial polish down on the floors, and
Oh
he's
yeah,
just not an animal. Wouldn't eat off
I
the floor.
know. It's like literally all my coworkers, well, not all, but like a couple of them, there's a few, they would totally eat off the floor. And I'm like, guys, you could literally put down like that. Like you could literally clean these floors to the where they're like sparkling and I know they're clean and I still wouldn't eat off the floor. Like I'll totally eat off my own floor at home, but
Right?
that's way different.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
got like
not one to
4
eat off of
people
a
walking
floor.
on it.
I'm just not one to eat off floors. I'll be real with you guys.
Yeah.
Like
It depends.
I understand the sentiment, and there is something about the 5 second rule. Like
Yeah,
if it hits
that's
the floor,
mostly what I mean.
if it hits the carpet in my room, and I know how dirty that carpet is, if it hits the carpet in my room, it is my own choice at that point whether or not I pick it up, and I will usually do it within a few seconds because there's deniability. But anywhere else, absolutely not.
And I love Judd's comment about, you know, like, I'm not an animal, and Marge is like, but he is. And Owen comes into the station with the horse. Kind of
This
reminds us of
me.
Buttercup coming into the season or the series.
He just simply he sized up.
No,
Yeah.
just literally, I was just like, well, this reminds me of that certain scene in season 1 when Owen shows up with a certain Bernese mountain dog.
Yes, I love
Every
it.
single one of them were getting deja vu as well. I can
Right.
guarantee.
So then Owen explains that his owner was going to put him down and couldn't do it, so he couldn't let that happen. But he has triggers, so they're going to have to avoid a bunch of them while he's at the station, and he can't be near. And they can't touch certain places on his body. He doesn't like ball caps or balloons, sunglasses, eyeglasses, goggles, plastic bags, puddles, and anything under the sun, really. But he's okay with flashing lights and sirens. I apparently that didn't seem to be something that bothered him, which was weird because most horses would freak out about that stuff.
You know, I was saying this before we started recording that like my one nitpick in the beginning when they were chasing him was that they were chasing him with sirens. The horse was already spooked. He was absolutely going to have bolted if there were sirens, but they were chasing him with sirens. I was like, turn off the fucking sirens. There's no one else on the road.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't need to be waving.
Yeah. And they even used it as a joke because Judge's like, well, he probably is because he's used to causing the emergency.
I love that line.
That was a good
that
line.
horse, his name should be Chaos because of how much chaos he's ensued on everyone.
Yeah. And then Paul's like questioning if this is a good idea, and Owen's like, it's like, well, we run into burning buildings when everybody's running out, and that's not a good idea, but we do it to save lives. Like, I'm gonna save Thunder. I'm like, okay, Bowen, you know, let's do that.
It literally.
I was like, okay, cool. Why not?
Yeah. So on this call, we get this interesting situation. 2 sisters and a bunch of people are on a bus back from Mexico, and the driver and several people, including one of the sisters, starts seizing and spewing out of their mouth this foam, and Tommy and some of them, and Tommy and Nancy and TK are finally there on scene. They realize there's something in her throat. They think she's choking at some point, and then they're seizing, and then they're realizing it's suddenly that it's a drug overdose because these certain people have had somehow gotten a deal or something with a drug mule and have swallowed a bunch of balloons or condoms full of drugs, and the bags have ruptured, which is causing an extreme overdose. They have to get everyone to the hospital, and Tommy's genius. She literally, she's like, we'll bring them all instead of the ambulance. They just take the bus.
Fair enough. I mean, it works.
Yeah,
it doesn't have
'cause
flashing lights and sirens, but it works.
Yeah,
because there was like 30 people on that bus, like having to like transport them in separate
Right.
ambulances when you probably can only fit like at least 2 patients per ambulance. That would be a lot.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of ambulances, and that's so she did a really good job with doing that. And I'm sure some police escorts came in to help.
Right.
And you know, at the hospital, so it's cool how this one sister is sitting there, and all of a sudden Carlos and Campbell walk in, And I really like how these last few times we've had a way to bring the Rangers into the calls of the paramedics or the fire department. Because I think that was everybody's concern when the series had the break. Like, oh my God, what if Carlos becomes a Ranger? He's never going to see TK on a call anymore. And they're kind of trying to like show that maybe that's not always the case. Like TK really wasn't there, but there's a way he could be. So I think that's pretty cool.
It was such a seamless transition from like the last scene to this scene. Like I loved it.
Yeah. And during the scene, the sister had tried to share something with her sister, and then she got sick, and then several other people, including the bus driver, was part of the problem. So when she gets to the hospital, her sister unfortunately passed away, but the surgeon had been able to remove 3 baggies of drugs from her sister's stomach, but she was way too far gone to save, unfortunately. Finding out that her sister had some money problems, then the sister had known nothing about these drugs, but they got the sister's phone and was hoping they could use her phone with like facial recognition in the morgue, or like Buck did the thumbprint of Chimney when he's in the hospital to open up.
Yeah, I was thinking about that one.
Yeah.
And they tried using facial ID with permission of the sister to open up her phone, but it didn't work because I can't remember what exactly the coroner said, but it had something to do with, because her body's starting to deteriorate now, the facial recognition doesn't usually work. But the sisters have similar facial features that it actually worked on the sister to open it
Which
up.
I'm like, that would never happen unless you were like identical twins.
Yeah.
Also,
Like,
I did not
it
think
was
the
a
sisters
stretch.
looked that similar.
I
Like, the
didn't either,
actresses
like-
did not look that similar.
Yeah,
So
like
it was a little bit of a stretch, but we'll let that.
yeah, just a bit. But I was like, I'm just gonna ignore that. That wouldn't happen unless you were literally identical twins, where you had like literally the same face.
I was watching like a set of twins, see if they could open each other's phones with their faces, and they were, but they were literally
Yeah, I've
identical.
seen it too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, that wouldn't happen on anyone except for them.
Right. Which I did skip a scene, but I'll go back to it. So Owen is trying to find somebody to take Thunder. They're at the 126, and they built kind of this makeshift corral in the middle of the engine bay. I don't, definitely not good situation. Every person that came in had different ideas, and there was even a woman that came in and it seemed like it was going to work to get the horse, but then she went to put her glasses on, and then the horse freaked out, of course.
Chaos.
Yeah.
And so Owen's back in his truck and starts working on trying to figure out how to, get him somewhere. And he doesn't want him to take into a slaughterhouse, which is where certain farms will send their animals if they do end up having to put them down. And he didn't want that to happen. And Judd's like, Thunder's behavior is like a horse in pain. And so unfortunately, animals like that have to be put down. And when you work on a farm or a ranch or any kind of animal owner like that, it's unfortunately something you have to do. My dad had a Labrador that he adored when he was a kid, and they lived out on a farm. And unfortunately, the dog got sick and they had to put him down. And my dad had to take him out in the, back part of the land and shoot him because the dog was sick.
I mean, I grew up on a farm as well. We had to do.
Yeah.
We generally we let our animals live out their lives as much as we could. If we had pets that needed to be put down, we took them to the vets. But there were times where there was one instance where a guy's dogs invaded our farm, started attacking our pigs. My dad had to shoot all 3 dogs.
It's not fun, and they're not doing it out of business. Yes, there are definitely more humane ways of doing it, but I also think that an animal in suffering and pain is also not humane. So, and that's what.
But there are also more humane ways than sending it to a slaughterhouse. I will forever.
I agree.
Like, do not send horses to slaughterhouses.
Exactly.
So my one little caveat onto that whole thing is like, slaughterhouse is a different matter.
Right. Yeah, and no one wanted that. Like, we didn't want that. And Judd didn't want that. Owen didn't want that, and he's like. Even Judd, he's like, I have an idea. And I think Judd starts to pinpoint, and he's like, are we talking about the horse or something else? And because Judd's starting to realize that he's trying to save this horse, and the horse having a disease, something wrong with him. And Then all of a sudden we see some flashbacks. Owen's having some flashbacks of him and his brother, his half brother who passed away. And he doesn't want to give up on him like he did with his other brother. And so there's definitely Owen is trying to transfer some of his grief and pain into the saving of this horse, trying, so he's got some stuff to work on.
Maybe Owen should go to therapy next. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree.
He's been there before. Just go back.
Right?
Go back.
Yep.
Listen this time.
Yeah.
Literally.
So then we go back. So we have the Carlos scene with Campbell and their sister unlocking the phone. They were lucky. And then through the text messages that they find in there, they find out where they're supposed to drop these drugs off. And they go into this like massage parlor, #random. And this woman's
it was like
threatening them.
acupuncture.
Yeah, she's like
I'm
threatening them.
I never
because
trust
they're like,
acupuncture.
The raid. I love a good raid. I was just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yes,
Love
give it to
a good
me.
raid.
right. Well, and it was funny too because the woman's like, I want your badge numbers, blah blah blah. You guys did it. And then all of a sudden they like notice there's this like hidden room. They open up this door and there's, guns and drugs and all sorts of stuff in this room. And she'd been using the massage acupuncture parlor as a front for her drug smuggling. And I was like, yeah, I honestly thought it was going to be like she was just some nasty Karen. I'm surprised it turned into what it did.
I know.
And
When
her
she
like
said, "I want your badge numbers." I loved Campbell's clapback being
like,
like, "Ma'am, we're Texas Rangers. We don't have badge numbers." I'm like, go
yes.
off.
Also when she was like, "I'm going to see you in court," and he went, "Well, that court date, it's going to be fun."
right.
I'm looking
love
forward
it.
to
I
that
was-
court date. I was like, "Ooh,
Oh,
that would
yeah.
be me," because she was just threatening, like, "I'm gonna sue you," and he's like, "Ooh, I cannot wait for our court date." I
Right.
was like, "Oh, such a mood."
Yeah.
Yeah, like go off, Campbell. That's the point.
Yep.
But when they found that door,
Uh.
her face literally was like, "What? Like,
Right.
how did you ever
Yeah,
find that?"
The
Right.
poker
I'm
face
sure
is
she was gonna
not
try and
working.
use the wordage in the warrant to plead her case that it didn't declare everything or something to try and get out of being in trouble for that. But next scene we see is Carlos and Campbell talking over with the sister, explaining how the sister had borrowed some money from a loan shark, and when they forced Whitney this to make a drug run, which is common. And so a lot of these people were probably doing the same thing. The woman that they arrested was a trafficker with ties to the cartels and used her business to launder money. And I'm like, well, of course she did. And even though her sister has passed away, the state's going to be able to charge the woman with the murder of her sister, along with everyone else who died on the bus. So it sounds like several people died from the bus.
From what I understood, no one else that had been on the bus and started suffering had lived. From what I
all the
understood
people
from an
that have
earlier
taken
statement.
drugs died because there was that handful of people that were standing off the bus, and when they
Mhm.
drove the bus away, they were kind of like, "What the heck?"
Right.
Because
Yeah.
obviously they were like the sister, like they didn't take any drugs or anything. They
Yeah.
weren't part of that, but then there was a handful of people that were part
They
of that.
because they had all the baggies, and
Yeah.
when the baggies ruptured, they had just simply too much.
Yeah.
They have too many drugs in their system to be able
Right.
to come out, even with Narcan to start off with, and then like the hospitals. Like I don't think they ever had a chance. You know what I was just thinking? I'm really sad we're not going to get another crossover with 911 because we could have tied in the cartel storyline for 911 and had a nice little crossover.
We could have. Yeah.
Yeah.
That missed opportunities.
Yes, that was. I know the sister, she thanked. I really liked this conversation with Campbell, Carlos, and this sister because you could obviously see Carlos's brain and his thoughts change because the sister is a lawyer and she had spent a lot of time on her phone during the trip that her and her sister went on together. And the whole time her sister had been trying to tell her something, but she was just so busy in her phone and doing work. She wasn't focused on the moment with her sister. And now she's lost all that time with her sister because her sister's gone. Because had she given her sister the opportunity to truly talk to her, maybe this wouldn't have gotten so bad. And you can see like Carlos is kind of happening too, is he's realizing he's really got to get on the ball here because he cannot keep letting his desire to find his dad's killer affect his future and his marriage. But, it's Lone Star, and this isn't just going to be the only thing that happens in the next few episodes. So
Naturally.
we get T. King is coming home, kind of surprised to see Carlos there. And
They
Carlos
both
is like
lied to each other.
stuffing stuff underneath the table. TK's like, oh, what are you doing here? I thought you said you were working late. Carlos is like, I thought you said you had a meeting. Carlos is like, you lied. And TK's like, so did you. And then Carlos is like, could tell TK's hiding something behind his back. TK's like, he's like, no, I'm not hiding anything. And Carlos is like, well, then what's behind your back? And TK's like, fine, busted, officer. TK shows him the anniversary gift he got him, which was a guitar, so they can take lessons together.
I
And
thought that was so cute.
TK was hoping to gift wrap it, but while Carlos was at work. And then Carlos has the wrapping paper out. TK's like, why do you have the wrapping paper out? And TK's like, yeah. Carlos is like, fine, I'll tell you. He didn't want him to open till the next day or whatever for the official wedding anniversary.
And he's like, he's kind of picking on himself. He's like, it's not really good. It's not it's not as good as yours. And I was
right.
like, oh.
TK's like, yeah, and now you know my present, so you need to tell me, show me and stuff. And so Carlos kind of thinks it's dumb, but TK opens it and lets him, he's like, let me be the judge of that. And it's an empty box, which the first anniversary is technically the paper anniversary. So this actually is right up that alley. But, and TK's kind of like, why is it empty? And Carl's like, well, not for long. And he explains that every time he comes home, he's going to be putting his case files in there and his phone. So all of his obsessions to keep, so he can actually spend time with TK and not be focused on the stuff he shouldn't be focused on.
I let out the biggest awe in this moment.
It was sweet.
Yeah,
it was really good.
I went mushy. I was like, oh, that's so sweet. I was like, a lot more people could use to do something like that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I was relieved that this is at least a step in the right direction at least for them.
Yeah. And TK's, trying to say, oh, well, you don't have to promise that. Carlos like, I do. It's like, and he's like, every second he gets with TK is a gift and he's done wasting it. And I was like, yes, I love that quote. We've been seeing it online for a while. And TK, he was like, I can't believe you gift wrapped an empty banker's box. And Carlos is like, I told you it was dumb. TK's like, no, baby, it's the sweetest gift anybody's ever gotten me. And TK's like, there's one obsession I'm really hoping you wouldn't put away tonight. And then they kiss, and then obviously we know what's gonna happen.
Oh yeah, they're gonna spend some makeup time together.
Right. Yes. Hopefully Carlos doesn't fall asleep.
Yeah, hopefully he took a nap before this.
So Owen shows up at the place Judd suggested that he bring Thunder, which ends up being Marlene's ranch. Judd introduces them, and she starts to look at the horse and wants to know what's wrong. And they say how he's complicated. And she asks for specifics, and Owen's like, he bites and bucks. He generally seems to enjoy the sound of people screaming.
I think that's the most honest he's been yet about Thunder.
She's like, he's a horse. He's like, he only pulls that crap because he knows he can get away with it.
Which is exactly like dogs.
It's a little bit like a petulant child as well. I was gonna say child, but dogs too.
Yeah, dogs, because literally, my brother's dog, Winston, is literally like that. To the point that when we would take him on walks, he would want to say hi to dogs and stuff, and people thought he was aggressive because he made like this, it was like Cujo, and it was funny because like people would change their direction when they saw this small white fluffy dog. He has like little dog syndrome, and like I remember my mom being like, he only pulls this because he knows he gets away with it. So then we switched up his whole thing. So now he walks with like a gentle leader, and it works. But yeah, that's true. They only pull that crap because they know they can get away with it. Because I've seen this firsthand.
Yeah, and with larger animals like horses as well, like they're used to people being scared of them. Because again, horses are very generally pretty gentle creatures if you get the right one. Like all of them are different, but they're not aggressive by nature. But I've also gotten kicked by 2 separate horses, once in both of my knees at the same time and once in my hip. Yeah, that really hurt. And then the same horse that did hit my hip almost kicked my head in. So there was also that, because I went down from the hip kick and he was bucking. So there's potential for danger, and they can be deadly when they do whip out their hooves. But
Yeah.
they're gentle creatures by nature. So like they're tameable. But Thunder, you know, Thunder is just Thunder is a misunderstood boy. Okay.
Yeah.
He is the actual bad boy that is misunderstood in all of these tropes. We're just gonna
Yes.
so
For sure.
Yeah.
I do not say that about humans, but I will say that about horses. He is a misunderstood little lad. So we love him. But yeah. Also, was anyone else getting a vibe?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
I already have a whole
Oh,
thing
yeah.
to say about that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know if I should just
I'm
say
getting
it
a
now.
vibe.
Okay, so
Why not?
like when I knew this was coming up, I was like, okay, wait, why are they doing this? Are they trying to hook up her and Owen? Because in the last season she had a fiance. I
That's
Googled this
the point.
too to make sure that like I wasn't remembering it differently, and I was like, oh yeah, she had a fiance. So I'm like, are they trying to hook them
So
up? And also, did they forget that they gave her a fiance?
imagine if they did.
I think they did. I honestly do because I'm like they
All
forget storylines all the time. I'm
they
so
they
confused.
might either do a passing mention of a breakup, or maybe they're not going to do it. They just there's a vibe. And here's the thing, I actually like besides the glaring issue of the fiance, which I completely forgot about until now, Katie. Besides the glaring issue, I actually kind of like it because she reminds me a fair amount of Gwen. She's got the same spunk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Owen needs that spunk.
He does.
But
Yeah.
it maybe be he and Judd would need to have a maybe a little bit of a talk,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that
but
could get
not all it's
awkward if things went
in
south
the little
because
in the little bit of the like, exes, even if that was a long time in the past, I don't know. I don't think it'd be an issue, but I think just courtesy,
I mean
like,
they didn't
hey
really
man,
date. They like
they
literally
just
just
hooked
had a
up.
one night yeah, they just had a one night stand.
They just hooked up. So I don't think it'd be an issue. I think Judd would probably
Right.
be absolutely
I think
fine
that's
with
why
it.
he made the comment of like, I really hope this
hmm
doesn't get awkward or something like along the lines of that.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, Judd, are you playing some matchmaker?
Right. He probably doesn't realize what he's doing, because Judd.
Maybe he secretly really hates the fiance of like
Oh,
Marlena.
maybe.
If the
The
fiance is
fiance
still in the
was literally
picture.
like Troy Bolton's dad, like that actor. When I remember,
Yes.
Wait,
remember?
did we see the
Yes.
fiance?
He
I
was the
didn't.
high school
Yes, it
musical
was.
coach. Yes. He was the.
Oh my gosh.
Yep,
Mm.
that's right.
Well,
Yeah.
I got
So,
anything bad to say about him. So
the show ends with her basically, telling Owen that most of the training actually has to do with the owners and the writers, and he's like, well, no stable in town will take Thunder, and she's like, yeah, tell me something I don't know. He's like, she kind of basically says, if you want to save Thunder, she needs full buy-in from Owen, and that he's like, well, what does that mean? And she's like, subjecting yourself to the most humbling, grueling, quite possibly lethal experience of your life, and no matter what happens, no refunds. No one's like, well,
that
give me
sounds like a marriage proposition. I will just say.
yeah. Yeah. I'm curious. I definitely got the vibe. So that was the end of the episode, and it was like, I definitely got a vibe. I'm like, okay. So like, does Judge just realize that I think he might be setting them up? Or yeah, I kind of feel like something's going on there. And yeah.
I'm not against it. I'm kind of here for it. I want them to be able to explain away the fiance thing. So, but I of all the people to, because sorry, I keep stumbling over my words. It's the final season.
Yeah.
After having Owen with a different love interest each season, they're not going to have him in the show single. And so I'm like, it kind of makes sense for them to kind of establish him maybe with someone that's already been in the show before.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, don't know how much of this, but wasn't there some other scenes filmed with Ronan also at the stables with the horse and Owen? Well, I know Grace.
I don't know.
So I'm more asking Katie.
I'm like, I don't know, but that sounds interesting.
Because I know the actress who plays Wyatt's mom was the one that said the final season, and that
Oh
Instagram
yeah, she was
post
the one that started
kind of
all that, and then
spoiled
she
it
had
for everybody. And then
something. Yeah.
she kind of retracted it
Really?
briefly, and then obviously it came out that this would be the last season. And then I thought she'd been in a couple other episodes, so I was like, because I thought I saw a picture of Ronan at the same stables we were using for that. So I don't know if it's just he happened to be there one day when they were filming, or if it actually is like maybe there is a time when it is, because I could have sworn him and Carlos were involved. I don't know. I could be totally like thinking of something different, but I don't know. All in all, I think this was a really good episode. It's definitely had its funny moments, like Lone Star has some serious moments. I'm glad that TK and Carlos are getting counseling, but I'm also hoping that, Carlos really does stick to his word and kind of put some of that stuff aside so he can actually spend time with his husband, because they've been married a year and it sounds like things have been a little rough.
They've not had an easy first year of marriage.
Yeah. And I know there's more coming, so this isn't the only thing we're going to get happening.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, like, this particular slot of both Lone Star and 911, we are getting fed as far as the like ships go. We've got Carlos content tonight, because we're filming this on a Thursday, everyone. So tonight we're gonna be getting Buck Tommy content for 911. I am so looking forward to all of this, and I just had to say that because I was just thinking, we have a little pattern happening here. But I loved this episode. I thought it was pretty straightforward. I liked that it wasn't over complicated, and I thought it had a really interesting, just general storyline. I love the storyline with the horse. And I love that there was a like situation worked out. I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. I want to see Thunder living out his best, goodest boy life in the entire world because he deserves it. And I'm interested to see if the cartel thing is going to come back up again, or if this is the end of it. I feel like it could go either way. Like, yeah, we got the one drop off point. But like, who knows if that's gonna come back up or not? Like, could this be maybe related to Gabriel? Like, they could tie it in if they wanted
to think
to.
that like right now, because I'm like, it felt like very close, but then also like I'm like they could tie that to something else. Like they're obviously bringing that up for a reason.
Gabriel could be tied into pretty much anything. Like, it's kind of like his situation is so open that it could be anyone could be involved. Anything could be the case. Like, for all we know, Campbell's the guy who shot him. Or maybe he's gonna work with Carlos. I think I was making predictions about that to like bring it down. Could go either way.
Think random ass things like that.
So
I could go either way on that. Like, I don't know.
You just gave me like a little bit of a funny laugh with what I was thinking, because so I've been watching SWAT just kind of sporadically, not really like I'm watching it in order, but I'm not like watching more than like an episode or two every week. But I just watched an episode where Benito Martinez plays an accountant who's running away from the cartel that he'd been working for in Mexico, and a couple of the SWAT characters were taking him to Vegas to help him flee, but they didn't know it. And they ended up getting stuck with the cartels. And so this guy ends up giving himself up to the cartel to rescue them. And I was like, yeah, it's another like, shoot, what if, somehow this does come around to be related to Gabriel's death? That would be interesting to see, especially because he just played like somebody who was fleeing the cartel in another series. Also, it's very weird when you're watching something and he just randomly pops up, because I didn't expect it. And I was like, awkward.
My favorite thing, but it's also kind of like a jump scare sometimes. Yeah, I did love this episode. Like the couples counseling definitely I don't know, it was way different than I expected, which is why it made me love this episode a lot more. And there's just so much good things in this episode.
No, it was such a solid episode.
Do we have any fan thoughts?
Yes, I love seeing more Ranger Reyes, but the Owen horse storyline was a bit so good, but less Owen. Okay, I understand that sometimes, because sometimes the storylines can just be so berserk.
I don't know. I felt like this actually wasn't all that berserk.
I liked it,
like,
but like I
liked
understand that idea or that vibe that people get.
I don't know. I don't know that I necessarily agree, but I can see where the person's coming from.
Yeah, that's exactly what
That's
exactly what I mean. And I think that's it. Yeah.
So then the promo for the new episode. So we see Tommy talking to Nancy, and she mentioned she was on a call with her doctor about the mammogram she'd had, and they seem like they might have found something, and that's not so great. And then they're talking about in 2 weeks, there will be a break, I believe, after this episode airing tonight. Owen's like, let's do this, and Jed says he's gonna get killed. Marlene's like, no, he's not gonna get killed. Apparently, Owen's trying to ride Thunder. Another guy's like, yeah, he might get killed. Marlene tells Owen he's holding on to something dark and asks what it is. As we see glimpses of Owen having some nightmares. We see a lot of glimpses of Owen, Thunder, the stable's on fire, and even one of Tommy in what looks to be the hospital. And Owen says, you want the truth. So we'll have a 2-week break, which will actually work for us because then we can cover some 911 episodes because we are all dying to talk about them.
I know. That probably
I'm dying to watch them.
A
Grace
lot
is like,
because
I'm dying to watch them.
I haven't even watched them. I swear every time I I'm like, oh, I'm going to set today. I'm going to watch them. I don't wind up doing it. I need to watch them. I'm so excited. Yeah. And I think the fact that Tommy's coming back tonight, like on more than just a few second word. Yeah, because I saw the scene. I did see the clip of the scene that he was in for the first episode, and I was like, "Your vision in the cone, of course you are." Anyhow, dork for dork, I love them both. So I think him coming back in will be tonight's episode for us. I think that's gonna help spur because I want to see those episodes like a lot, and I've heard great things about the start of the season. So I'm going to knock them all out this in the next week so that we can talk about them. And I'm so excited because, yes, I know most of what happens, but I'm really excited to see the actual details.
Yeah, this promo just was like, whoa, because it was just like the Tommy thing. And then I started spiraling today because I was just thinking, wait, they literally said, I remember at that convention they had in Chicago, they were like, yeah, somebody dies this season, but it's not one of us. And I'm just like, wait.
I mean, they might as well make it Robin because he hasn't come in at all.
I'm
joking.
Oh,
I thought we were talking about that one.
Like, no.
What?
Yeah.
When someone dies this season, we already had someone die last season. What do you mean?
I think a lot of people were expecting Owen's cancer to come back and for him something to happen to him. But I don't know if it's going to be Tommy, but that's just how my brain is working right now. And
I don't see that.
I don't know how to feel or think or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to be Tommy partially because I don't know. I feel it might be.
It makes sense.
But I feel like it would be a little
because there was that clip of her passing out and everyone thought it was because of the gas. But what if it's because she's getting some form of treatment?
It's possible.
Yeah. I think maybe I just feel like it would be a little odd to try and both do that and then just not have a storyline about her children losing both their parents.
Yeah, that'd be terrible. I don't want it to happen. I'm just saying this that my brain is working right now.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just logistically in my mind, I was like, yeah, I feel like if we had more seasons coming, I could maybe see it. But I don't see killing off anybody when it's at the finale of the show. I don't see it. So I don't know if that's the case. Then we're worried because I don't want anyone to go.
Agreed.
I just
you look like you have a thought, EJ.
Yeah, I do. What if it's Campbell dying when him and Carlos are trying to solve the case of Gabriel?
Oh, that's the thought. I can see that.
The only reason I don't is because they implied that it was going to be somebody that we'd actually care. So I don't know.
Rip Campbell. Oh gosh.
Lots of question marks.
Yeah.
Which I think is what we want. We don't want something that we know going into the last 10 episodes or whatever that it's going to be this is what's happening or whatever, how many ever episodes we have. We want to be kind of kept on our toes, which is nice. We have a break and, obviously the 2-week breaks because of the World Series and Fox.
Oh, yeah.
But it's going to be kind of, I'm curious where they're going with some of these storylines that they're kind of opening up just because we do only have 7-ish episodes left.
Yeah.
I'm excited. and we're here, and we're sticking around with 911 and
So
whichever
excited.
of this future series that's starting to
I
be filmed
know.
in March of 2025. So
It's so close. I want to
I
hear
know.
more. Like,
I'm
so
like,
excited.
yeah, I'm very, I don't know, because I know a lot of Lone Star fans said they're not gonna watch it, but my eyes are open. Let me just put it that way, in like the shortest and simplest
Absolutely.
way.
No, even if this was the case, I would watch it. But it's not like Fox is canceling Lone Star and then opening up another 9-1. This is going to be through ABC.
that's
Um,
good.
so it's not Lone Star is not canceled because of it.
Right. And
So
I
I'm
think,
not. It's not like me holding out on
It's
watching other
poor
Fox
timing, but
shows.
like, we
yeah,
get
poor
it.
time. But it's more that probably because ABC wants another 911 show, and because Fox is raising the price of 911 Lone Star, ABC can't buy it, so they'd rather just start up their own series. Probably would
That way they won't have to lose that amount of money to acquire Lone Star to then, they're gonna make more money from just simply starting their own show. So no, I don't think it makes any sense to like if anyone's thinking it's like, oh, because they canceled Lone Star, it's not even the same network.
no.
So I am very much looking forward to seeing what this new 911 show is going to be. I'm looking forward to seeing, what's left in Lone Star. I am definitely having questions about the storylines they're opening up, but
Mhm.
for the most part, I'm here for it.
Yep, I am too.
Agreed.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us and listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check out our website at 911lsroundup.com. You can follow the podcast on our socials at 911lsroundup on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. Be sure to join our Discord server. The link is in the description of the podcast and also on our website.
You guys can follow me, Katie F. Love Tarlos, on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads.
You guys can follow me, Grace, at Ronan Rathland 911 on Instagram and at Sheepgirl31 on Twitter.
You can follow me, EJ, at EJ8302 on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, anywhere else you can find me, mostly. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.